First of all, a thought of relief, because we have to think about the plight of those tourists who were out of the blue skies, were imprisoned and interrogated on something they didn't do, that they had no idea of. So, first of all, as an Israeli, a sigh of relief. And then also a lot of respect for the way the Israeli government dealt with the issue. You know, we could very easily have made a hysteria about it from the beginning, and a lot of noise, and accusing Turkey, etc., accusing the kind of behavior that sometimes the Turkish president gave us an example of. But instead of that, we chose quiet diplomacy, and we chose also to go through discrete channels. I am sure that other countries were involved in that, maybe the United States, maybe other countries, but to do it in such a way as to leave the Turkish government the opportunity to save face and to liberate the two Israelis without himself losing face. And this became more difficult yesterday after the Turkish Minister for Interior had quite a harsh declaration, and it seemed that things were going the other way, but we continued our effort, and everybody took part in this effort. President Herzog, Prime Minister Bennett, Foreign Minister Lapid, each one at his own level with his own people. And after 8-9 days of talks and patience and keeping a low profile, we succeeded in liberating these two innocent people.
Right, and you mentioned there are other countries that were involved. We talked a lot before about the sort of very delicate diplomatic relations between Israel and Turkey, but could maybe the United States, for instance, have applied pressure on Turkey as well to release this Israeli couple at the Israeli request?
It is a possibility, and if they did it in a very quiet way, which is the right way to do that kind of things. I would not be astonished at all if the United States was involved, and maybe more countries too. There are other countries in Europe, not all of them, but some countries have good relations with Erdogan, and it is possible that there was an intervention also on their part. Maybe we will know that in the next few days. But this is a success for quiet diplomacy. You know, I always thought that diplomacy and quiet diplomacy is the most effective way to solve that kind of problems. You don't solve that kind of problems by shouting on the roof or making big headlines, etc., etc. It would be very, very easy to go out and attack Turkey or attack the Turkey government or even Erdogan, but it would not have brought any result. The results were brought by quiet diplomacy, were brought by patience, because 9 days is a long time, certainly for the family who was waiting for the liberation of these prisoners. And I think that Israel here played it very well. It was a difficult situation. It could have endangered a grave crisis in our relationship with Turkey if it was not resolved. And I'm very pleased to see it resolved by now.
Right, and the ties between Israel and Turkey have not been great in recent years, and what started as a bad thing maybe can lead to a good thing, which is an improvement in ties between Israel and Turkey. We heard formerly Alon Liel, a former ambassador, who spoke about the possibilities of strategic interests that maybe Israel and Turkey have that can be discussed. What do you think of the future of this very complicated relationship?
You know, I must say, I was puzzled by this arrest, because in the last few months, Turkey has been courting Israel. Turkey has been trying for the last few months to get better relations with Israel. And you remember that after President Herzog was introduced, they had a half-an-hour talk with Erdogan, and there were other diplomatic talks between Turkey and Israel, how to better the relations. The problem was that Israel was quite reluctant to go that way, because twice in the last few years we have tried to better relations with Turkey. We even paid a lot of money compensation for the victims of Marmara. But every time we did that, after a few months, Turkey again made the relation worse. So that this time there was it seemed that there was very little interest on the part of Israel to better relations. So it just might have been that Erdogan wanted to attract our attention and say, look, what can happen if the relations are not good? And if they are good, look what I can do for you. I can liberate these two people from one moment to the other. Maybe Erdogan has strange ways to act on the international scene. So maybe paradoxically that this was pressure on Israel to try and better the relationship with Turkey in the long run, which, as you said in your question, are strategically important for Israel. Turkey is a very important regional player here. And for the last 10 years, we did not have good relations. Maybe that can be changed. If it can be changed, it is also for the good of Israel. That's obvious.
Right. And but obviously, any relationship also has an effect on other relationships. Is Israel limited in how close it can get to Turkey because of its ties with other countries such as Greece and Cyprus, or with some of the Arab states that are at odds with Turkey at the moment?
Yeah, you are right. I mean, there might be a problem. I think that if Israel gets closer to Turkey, and I hope it will, it should be done not at the expense of our good relations with other countries. You mentioned Cyprus and Greece. We have an important connection and relationship with these two countries. Also about the problems of the gas that we want to export together to Europe. And certainly, if we better our relations, with Turkey, I would not want to see that at the expense of the relationship with these two neighbors of Israel who are very friendly. Also, other countries. Egypt does not have good relations with Turkey because Egypt considers that the Turkish government is an affiliate of the Muslim Brotherhood. So our relations now with Egypt are good. And I would not want also these relations to be affected by a closer relationship between Turkey and Israel. So, always when you go on the international scene, when you try to better relation with one country, you have to see what is the effect on your relationship with others. But here, Israel, I think, can do that, can have a better relationship with Turkey and not endanger any existing good relationship with other neighbors. I think it is doable. And like we proved now in the last 9 days that diplomacy can work in order to liberate people, I think diplomacy can also work in order to better relation with one country without worsening it with another.
You mentioned another important issue for the countries, which is gas exports. Especially, there are two competing gas pipelines into Europe, the Turk Stream pipeline, which is going through Turkey, and then Israel is building the East Med pipeline with Greece and Cyprus. The Egyptians, you mentioned, also have bad ties with Turkey. They also have plans of linking up their gas pipeline potentially to Israel and onward to Europe. So how is the energy exports maybe going to have an effect here on all of these relationships that Israel has with these countries?
Look, what I think would be the best for all these countries you mentioned now, who have discovered a treasure of energy, of gas in the Eastern Mediterranean, and all of them would like to export it to Europe, who is craving for gas, craving for energy which is cleaner than coal, which is still used in Europe. And so it is very important that at this juncture to try and increase the gas supply to Europe, which is today dependent on the gas they get from Russia.
Right.
And they don't like, the Europeans don't like the situation that they are dependent only on Russia for the gas. And they would like to diversify. And when they want to diversify, they look towards the Middle East, or better say towards the Eastern Mediterranean, towards Israel, towards Cyprus, Greece, Turkey, Egypt. All these countries have now discovered gas in enormous quantities, which can satisfy the demand in Europe for years and years and years and years. And I think it would be for the best of all these countries to try and reach an agreement and work together. There can be one pipeline, two pipelines, three pipelines. It doesn't have at the expense of each other. There can be also one pipeline. You know, these countries today are not enemies like we used to be with Egypt before the peace treaty. And all these countries have relation between them.
Certainly.
And they are grown-up countries, important countries. They should be able to work together to solve this problem.